Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
It is the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 295, airing on October 19th. Don, we're going to talk about quite a few things this episode. One of the things I'm most excited about is this weather coming in at the late second half of October. Looks like it's going to be a good week, but I want to start the segment out reviewing Youth Weekend with your grandson. I know we talked about that coming up last episode. I know how much you enjoy spending time with your grandkids, but even though the weather didn't cooperate, walk us through what happened last week for Illinois youth gun season.
What happened was a lot of hot weather, but we still hunted every evening. Did not hunt any mornings. The cameras were pretty much dead in the mornings anyway, and I didn't want to burn out stands and such because that youth tag is still good during the gun season in November, which that's when Walker shot his buck last year, was the opening minutes of the firearm season. And we'll be back out at it then, but he did shoot a coyote. Got a coyote the second evening out. I guess we didn't see deer the first evening, but we seen a coyote that evening, and he couldn't get a shot. It was just in the brush passing through, never stopped. And then the second two evenings we seen deer, including bucks. And you might have seen the social media post I made where we were sitting in a 360 blind the last evening of the hunt and had deer right outside. And you know, he's just calm as can be. He doesn't get all fired up. I mean, he'll say, "There's a deer," or something, or "Here comes a buck," but he's not shook up, shaking, or anything like that. And I don't know if that'll change if a big one comes by or what, but we're going to be a little more selective this year. We're not going to just shoot the first buck that comes along. And there's a lot of bucks that I would let him shoot that are, 140 to 160s, and some older bucks that I wouldn't mind, seeing cold out or shot. So looking forward to that November firearm season.
Well, I think the awesome part about this is, and I by no means am implying that he didn't hang out with you and help you before, but now that he lives there, he's getting to see 365 days a year versus just when they come visit grandma and grandpa, what hunting's about and help him with projects. When I was younger and would travel to Lester's house, that's who first introduced me to hunting. We might have a week or a long weekend or something where I got to help granddaddy out with some stuff and then go hunting when hunting season comes around. But what he's getting the experience now on that farm is working it pretty much almost on a daily basis with you. And I think that's really, really cool, where he's going to learn so much. You're going to have to come up with something other than a prodigy nickname for him, because he's starting out at a very young age seeing direct results of habitat projects and decisions and what that does to the herd as he's growing into a teenager. So I think that's a cool part of it.
Yeah, I lived about 3 miles from this farm where my grandparents lived when I was a kid, but he's going to live literally across the field. I mean, he could literally walk to our house. That's how close he is. And of course, he's old enough that he can drive there. They've got a Polaris Ranger that he could drive to our house. And when he comes to our house anyway, he's always jumping on the Quiet Cat bike and riding it down to the farm or whatever. And the cattle is another thing that him and I have got a common interest. Last week we took some cattle to the sale barn, so he came and helped me load up 2 different loads and hauled them in. Had to sort some out. He's got 4 heifers at his house that are going to calve next spring, and I've got 5 at my place that's going to calve next spring, so I'm sure he's going to be on top of that. And then this winter, when I'm on the consulting trail, he'll be taking care of my cattle for me, so Robin won't have to do that anymore. So she's happy about that, and so is he.
I was getting ready to say, Robin gets the win for that one. She doesn't have to go down there in the cold weather and water and feed the cattle.
Yeah, and Walker just loves doing it, so it's just a win for everybody.
Huge win for Robin. There you go. Well, my buddy Patrick took Bryson. If people remember on Chasing Giants TV last Christmas, we released a video of Bryson on a youth hunt last year. Really good video. They did a super good job producing it. But Bryson killed a deer last year. He's still young enough to qualify for the Illinois youth season, and they went up and hunted one of the permission farms. And they said the same thing. Not only was it hot, but I think what makes it even worse when it's hot is like 1 or 2 mile an hour wind. And it was just, he said where they were at was just dead calm. I mean, they didn't have any breeze whatsoever and just stagnant hot. And he said it was just miserable conditions, not a lot of movement either.
Yeah, it was. I was, before we would go out in the afternoon, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours before we'd go out, I'd put water bottles in the freezer so they weren't froze totally solid, but there was ice in them. And we were taking those to the blind and just wearing t-shirts. I just wore my Osseo t-shirt and blue jeans. I didn't even put camo pants on sitting in that blind. It was so stinking hot, but the cameras weren't showing anything moving before dark hardly. I mean, right there at last light, I'd get some pictures of does or young bucks, but even the mature bucks, wasn't seeing their pictures at night even. It just like movement stopped and literally like all the cameras I got out, I'd wake up in the morning and I always check them every morning. And on an average morning, I'm going to delete about 500 pictures from overnight. And on a good morning, it's like with this cold front this coming week, I'll be deleting 1,000 pictures every morning. But during that hot spell, it was less than 100. It was like 80, 90 pictures. So like 20% of what it would be just under average conditions.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit after the Osseo break about this upcoming week, the weather forecast, our hunting plans, the Rut Report. I want to dive into this because the second half of November, when packaged with the right weather, can be dynamite. But before we take the Osseo break, I know a lot of our listeners are rural people and share common interests with us. I want to dive back into this cattle topic with you because on your regular Don Higgins page, you had like a contest to see who could guess what breed of cattle that you were moving to. I know this is a hunting podcast, but I know a lot of people just find it interesting. What breed did you go away from and what breed are you getting and why?
Well, I had shorthorns and we kept the 4 best heifers that Walker is keeping at his place. So he had 3, and then I had another one that I just didn't want to get rid of. So I gave it to Walker to put in his pasture. So we still got the 4 shorthorns, or I should say Walker does. But so I sold all my shorthorn cows and heifers, and I got Piedmontese. And Piedmontese is an Italian breed. What makes them really interesting is they're very lean. They're super lean, and they've got a gene called the myostatin gene that makes them heavily muscled. They're called double muscled, but it's super lean meat too. And we had a couple of Piedmontese cows years ago, and we actually had some Piedmontese beef. And my wife doesn't like ribeyes because of the fat in the ribeye. But we had some Piedmontese ribeye, and she swears it's to this day, and this was probably 10 years ago, we had these steaks, and she swears to this day the best steak she ever had in her life was that Piedmontese ribeye. And so I'm trying to develop some really high quality beef. Don't care what the animals look like so much anymore. And, they do DNA tests that's just amazing anymore with these animals. There's a place called Identity that tests the DNA, and they can tell you all kinds of things about that individual animal. And one of the things is tenderness of the meat. And so I bought a Murray Gray bull who is actually a square meter. So a square meter is like a smaller sized Murray Gray. And he's been DNA tested so that his tenderness score is a perfect 10. So 5 would be average. And they score these animals on all these different traits. Marbling is another one. So he's a 7 for marbling, but he's a perfect 10 for tenderness. And combine that with the Piedmontese, who's really tender anyway because of that myostatin gene. I'm getting some questions on why don't you use a Piedmontese bull and have purebred Piedmontese calves? Well, there's 2 reasons. A Piedmontese calf is typically a larger calf. So sometimes the cows have trouble calving. So I wanted something with a little better calving ease. And then the other reason is there's a lot of people think that Piedmontese, straight Piedmontese meat is too lean. You got to be careful how you cook it. You don't cook it near as long. You can make it tough by overcooking it. So you got to be really careful. So by crossing it with this Murray Gray bull that's got a 7 score for marbling, we're putting a little bit of fat in them. It won't be near as fat as typical beef, but it won't be lean as like deer. And that's basically what Piedmontese would be comparable to as far as how lean they are.
Wow.
The other thing interesting about Piedmontese is they have hair that's similar to deer hair. You know how the winter coat on deer, they've got that hollow kind of coarse hair? Well,
Yeah.
Piedmontese have a different hair coat than other cattle. They've got that coarse, hollow winter hair. So really interesting breed, and looking forward to getting some calves out of them. I bought 5 heifers out of South Dakota, had them shipped in, and they were bred to a calving ease Angus bull so their first calf, will be small and they can have it easy enough. And then we'll breed them to the Murray Gray. And down the road, I will probably end up buying a Piedmontese bull to get some purebred calves. But the first few calves out of them, I want to be easy on them and give them a calving ease bull before we go to a
especially the first
bull.
calf.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, there's so many similarities in things. What's something that no one would think you've learned from cattle that have applied to deer over the years? I'll put you on the spot. This isn't the Higgins hot seat yet, but as much as you're around animals, what is something that you've seen or studied or learned from cattle that you found kind of parallels with whitetail?
Well, I've shared this before, but years ago, I was sitting in my tree stand one day, and I was trying to manage my farm in such a way that I was trying to save every buck. I wanted every buck to make it to 5-6 years old. Then I'd shoot the biggest ones, and I talked about how typically the bigger ones would end up leaving or getting killed by the neighbors or whatever, and I'd get stuck with the worst ones in each age class. Those were the ones that made it to the older ages. The best ones were either leaving or getting killed. And I was sitting in my stand one day and I got to thinking, raising cattle, I don't let the worst bull calf breed the cows. I mean, it's selective. Now, granted, deer are wild, it's a totally different situation, but I thought if I do what I can to control the local deer herd, at least the deer that are on my property through culling, no different than a cattle rancher making steers out of most of his calves and only the best remain bulls. That's kind of that thought process got me started. And then, talking to Bronson Strickland, and he'd already wrote the book on that approach to management anyway. But I think it's the whole genetic thing. And it's just so fascinating that a little 1-cell sperm has so much information in it. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much information is in that one tiny cell that translates to the calf or to the fawn or whatever animal it is. And the whole genetic thing just really intrigues me. And I said before at the Iowa Deer Classic when I was doing the seminar last spring that if I could go back in time and be 18 years old again, I think I would go to school to be a geneticist. And I would probably work in the beef industry as a geneticist because it's just amazing how they can take a DNA sample and it's so accurate too. And it's not just carcass traits. They can tell you, is this going to be a calving ease bull? How big are his calves going to be? What kind of feed efficiency is he going to have? What kind of growth rate is he going to have? How good are his daughters going to be as far as brood cows? And then you got all the carcass traits, you got the tenderness, the marbling, the ribeye area, and just all these different things and grade and yield. All that stuff they can tell from a single cell. It's just amazing.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break and listen to a spot from Assia, and we'll be right back to talk about upcoming weather for late October and also our annual Rut Report. We got some announcements to make with that. We'll be right back.
Assia gear was forged by apex predators. Our 2 camo patterns are built from nature's most lethal hunters and designed to vanish anywhere in the whitetail's range. Our Raptor pattern draws inspiration from the unique feather patterns of a great horned owl, while our Rapix pattern is derived from the patterns of bobcats, coyotes, mountain lions, and wolves. But camo's just the start. Every detail of our gear is engineered for bow hunters. From our patent-pending bow hunting collar to our premium fabrics that keep you quiet, dry, and dialed in all seasons. Osseo gear is made to last, with our lifetime warranty standing behind every stitch. Visit Osseo Gear and use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off your first order. That's ASIOgear.com.
Well, for those who missed it, congratulations to Stone Cold Killer Joe Miles on his first big 10-pointer I think he shot. Not sure where it was, but just posted, I think, a couple days ago, his first whitetail of the season. So congratulations to him. Also, congratulations to our own Josh Anderson for killing a good Georgia buck. We were going to show this story on Chasing Giants TV this year because there's a vital piece of information in it that we talk about on this podcast that played out to the T on this hunt, and that is same time, same place. Josh did the work and kept up with the records and the data, and it played out perfect for him. So congratulations to him on a good Georgia buck earlier this week, and we'll have that hunt for you very soon. If you didn't catch it on Friday, just 2 days prior to the release of this, the Justice family released a video of Jake Justice's son was hunting with his grandpa and got his first buck. And we got to release the video of his first buck with a piece of archery equipment. So make sure you're checking out Chasing Giants TV for those hunt and habitat videos. Don, let's talk a little bit about the weather. I mentioned to you before we got on air today that over the last 2 days, I've seen a lot of buck sparring pictures, and we've had a little bit drop in temperature since that youth weekend we spoke about in the first segment. But what you see in the forecast coming up this week, let's break that down a little bit, both from pressure and temperature. A lot of things aligning that we could have some good hunting conditions here the third week of October.
Yeah, so we got a weather front that's supposed to hit on Saturday evening, the day before this podcast releases, and into Sunday morning, we're supposed to get a little over an inch of rain from that weather front, but it's going to really drop the temperatures. In fact, starting Sunday for the following week, there's not a single day that it's going to even be 70. Going to be in the low 60s most of that time. Temperatures at night, I'm down in the 40s, even the high 30s a couple different nights. So also the barometer is going to start rising. I was checking that out on Weather Underground. So this coming week is going to be some fantastic conditions for deer hunting. And I expect, I was just talking about the number of pictures I'm deleting every morning when I get up and check those cameras. I expect that number to just skyrocket starting about Sunday.
So we got basically, this is one of those triggers as we're 3.5 weeks from the rut, 3 weeks from the rut, the beginning of the rut. Those bucks, the fever pitch is starting to build up a little bit. That colder weather drops. A lot of things are coming into play as we approach, that third, fourth week of October, where those bucks are going to do some things that they normally don't do when it's hot weather, and that's get up and move around, maybe go back to their summer range looking for that first hot doe. We've talked about that time after. I feel like we talk about it all the time, but it's so vitally important that we're watching the weather as we're leading up to those weeks prior to the rut, because that's when those bucks are they can't hold it anymore. They're just out on the prowl, right?
Yeah, I just hope we don't, we're getting this cold front, the third week of October. I just hope it doesn't rebound and we get another warm spell right there at the end of October, early November. That's when I would really like to see the cold weather, but still, we got a good week coming up, and, maybe it'll just stay cooled off for the rest of the fall, and if it did, that'd be perfect, but we could sure use the rain. I seen a map of Illinois with drought conditions, and there's one spot where it's extreme drought, and it's right where I'm at. The meteorologist that posted that said that our area, that little red circle, is as dry as it's ever been since 2012. The last time it was this dry was the drought of 2012. And I can tell you, it is super dry. And we're supposed to get an inch or a little over an inch this weekend, but that's not going to be near enough. We need 10 inches if it comes right.
Yeah, spaced out over about 5 days.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
even a couple weeks, if it,
Yeah.
we need several inches of rain.
Well, we've had those years where we had that cold front hit, say the third week, and then all of a sudden we're trying to hunt the first week of November and it's in the mid 80s and the lows in the low 70s, and that flat out stinks. That's probably the worst hunting that I can remember ever having, because we had that cold snap and then all of a sudden it just turned hot, and it was a very, very frustrating early November, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the weather for this coming week right now, and it looks to me like Wednesday morning is going to be ideal because the barometer is rising. That's when it's going to peak, one of the peaks this coming week. But Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, it's supposed to be down to 37 degrees, and with that cold temperature and the barometer, Wednesday morning ought to be a really good morning.
So your first morning hunt might be October 22nd. Is that what you're saying?
And that's about as early as I've ever hunted a morning. I mean, it's been literally decades since I've hunted a morning that early, but that morning things are lined up locally here anyway. Now that might be different, guys in Ohio or wherever. It may be earlier to folks to the west, but right here where I'm at, Wednesday morning looks like the day to be in the woods.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. Why don't we make a quick kind of announcement about how we're going to do the Rut Report and why. We're going to change this up a little bit this year, and it's for very strategic reasons, and most importantly, feedback from the folks that really like reading or hearing that information to kind of compare to what they're seeing. So let's take a break for that discussion right now. Go ahead.
I thought you was taking a break.
No.
Yeah, so the Rut Report this year is going to be a typewritten social media post. It's going to be shown on several different social media accounts. It's going to be the Higgins Outdoors account, the Chasing Giants TV account, Real World account, your personal account, Terry, and we'll probably tag a couple other sponsors depending on the day it is and what the message is that day. But we've tried different methods over the years. I've done a video version. Last year, we had people from the Chasing Giants TV team providing some feedback as well. But what I was hearing from folks is that they would much rather get the typewritten report because they can read it in their tree stand and they can't listen to the video version in their stand. So just a lot of people said they'd prefer the typed version. So that's what we're going to go with. Be very similar to when I started years ago. I think this has probably got to be about the 6th or 7th year I've done it now. I started with just a typed version, and I always post a picture relative to what I'm talking about that day. It might be a trail camera photo I got that day or something I seen in the timber. But I can tell you that I plan on spending as much time in the woods this November as I ever have, because I'm trying to gather some video history on some bucks. Not bucks I plan to kill, bucks that younger bucks I think have some potential down the road. And also working on another project we'll talk about later, but just trying to gather a lot of video footage from different stands. And also I'm hunting, I've got cameras out on 3 different tracts of public land across 3 different counties actually. And I got some permission properties. The Turning Point buck, for example, he's on permission properties. So I'm going to be covering a lot of territory and spending a lot of time in a tree. And folks can just tune in to any of those social media accounts and get the daily Rut Report.
Well, and there's one other reason that you're going to be able to spend a lot more time in the tree, and that's kind of an answer to prayer, and that is you're feeling better. Last year you just weren't feeling that great, and you only videoed for me, I think, just a couple times just because you didn't feel good. And we're so grateful that that's turned a corner and you're feeling better these days.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of people ask me, send messages, want to know what the diet I'm on, and I've lost 20 pounds. I didn't even try to lose a pound. All I did was change my diet. I just cut out all carbs, basically, and sweets. Um, I don't drink any soda pop anymore, unsweet iced tea, no breads, no sweets, and I'm basically eating meat vegetables, and fruit. And I even cut out mashed potatoes for like the first 4 months to really cut those carbs back. And I'll tell you, I literally feel 10 years younger than I did. Anybody that's wondering what the diet is, it's made me feel so much better. Lots of meat and fruits and vegetables.
Yep.
Lots of salads too.
And your blood work looks better than it has in years too. So it's really made a big difference. So we're glad you're feeling better.
Well,
you put on a pretty good show on the podcast, but those who were close to you knew how rough you were feeling last year. So we're glad to see you spunky and fired up about all the liberals again and not
some things never change.
All right, well, let's transition to the 360 Blinds Higgins Hot Seat segment. And this segment, I don't know if you saw this video or not, but I have to tell a small story. And then I'm going to give you either a chance to give your commentary on the story or maybe add a personal experience that relates to this story I'm going to tell you. For those of you who know and have followed us, we have a very good friend of ours out in Kansas named Josh Pretzer. Gotten to know him, and he's just a big buck killer, but he is one of the probably leading experts in the country on soil health. And when Real World or Green Prairie talks about soil health and humic acid, Josh is the guy. So Singular Agronomics is his company out there, and are they doing great things for the agriculture world? But Josh is also kills some giants. I mean, absolute giants, especially for a young man. He's got his act together out there in Kansas. But did you see this video, by the way, or is this new to you?
I did not. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So Josh got on Instagram, and you could tell something was going on when he posted a video and said he just had to share a story. And Josh has got this real... It's just you got to go follow him on Instagram, especially Instagram, not so much on Facebook, but he's just got this way about him. Great personality. He needs to be the one to have a TV show one day. But he was kind of real somber and talking about it. And he had two kind of bucket list things that he wants to do. And that is kill an absolute giant 8-pointer, like giant, 170 plus. And he wants to kill a really big buck with a recurve. And there might have been some, with the traditional archery, there might have been some other kind of criteria. I don't want to overstep and misspeak, but they were kind of a bucket list things that he wanted to do. And I don't remember which one he basically had the chance as his like number one hunting goal, but he had a really good chance at it this year. But he went out on a firearm antlerless only weekend in Kansas to try to do some doe management for their row crop, and had an incident where he saw a deer, went to shoot, and the deer just ran off like nothing ever happened, and he assumed he missed the deer. And another deer came out and doe, and he shot and dropped it right where it was supposed to be. And when he got out of the stand, he walked up and saw that there was 2 dead deer laying. So he actually hit the first one. So while most people would have gotten online and bought another antlerless only tag and tagged it the next day or thrown it in the ditch or whatever, Josh does the right thing and calls the game warden and says, how can I take care of this? And the only solution was he had to use his either sex tag. He had 2 tags in his pocket, an antlerless only and an either sex. So, I mean, it speaks to the credibility of Mr. Pretzer. He didn't publish this video to get a pat on the back. I firmly believe that. But he basically told the story and said, I had the chance to have a bucket list, one of my top 2 goals, a really good chance of accomplishing it, and I'm not going to be able to do that now because of a mistake that I made. And he had 2 tags, so he didn't do anything illegal. I just want to make sure all of our listeners understand that. But the game warden said, you can't go buy another tag. You need to use the 2 that were in your pocket at the time you harvested them. So he had to kind of take it on the chin a little bit and use his buck tag to tag that second doe. So my question to you is, thinking back on your career, any situations or stories where you've had to just take one for the team and do the right thing? That might be something along with what Mr. Pretzer's done to give him some encouragement that you've been there. Or if you don't have one of those stories, just talk a little bit about Josh and his decision to do it the right way.
Well, I'm not a bit surprised how Josh handled that. I mean, There's a person has character and a person has a reputation. And a reputation is what people think of someone. Character is what they really are. And there's a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, there are people out there, you and I know them, that have decent reputations, but when it comes right down to it, their character just flat out sucks. It's pathetic. And not going to name names or anything like that. And it's not just hunters. I mean, it's across, any
It's all
group that you
society.
want. Yeah, society as a whole. I'm not a bit surprised at how Josh handled that. There's another story I heard very similar where, and it's probably going to be out, maybe it's already out, I don't know, but another young hunter, young compared to me anyway, that had to self-report himself to a game warden for something that accidentally happened. And I'm not surprised about how that young man handled it either, because I know him good enough to know his character, not just his reputation, but his character. So, hats off to both those guys for the way they handled it. But as far as similar situations with me, the only thing that comes to mind is, and I told this story not too long ago, but it's probably been, well, it had to have been at least 25 years ago, maybe between 25 and 30 years ago. I was hunting a property. Actually, it was a property that Al Foster used to hunt. Cattle pasture, growed up cattle pasture. When Al quit hunting, he told me to have at it. So I went to the landowner and I got permission, and I hunted there for a few years until the landowner passed away and it sold. But this one particular morning, I climbed in my stand before daylight. I mean, there was a full moon, so you could still see, if there was a deer, because I was on the edge of the cover along a field edge. And if a deer walked under me, I knew it was a deer and not a coyote or a raccoon or anything. I mean, you could see that good with the moonlight. And anyway, there was a doe come by me, and right behind her was a big buck. And it was too dark to be shooting. I mean, it was before legal shooting time anyway, but they passed and they went a certain direction. Then, I don't know, it was maybe, I'm just going to guess 20, 30 minutes later, barely shooting light, but it was definitely, legal shooting time. A buck is coming through the brush from the direction those two deer had went. And it was a buck. I could see it was a buck. The buck that had passed by me in the dark, he had a light colored rack. I mean, you could see the white rack. Well, this buck that's coming to me through the brush, he's got a white rack. And I'm thinking, here he comes. Here comes this giant. It was thick enough that I didn't get a real good look at the rack, but I could see it was a buck coming. And I draw back as he's about to step out from behind a multiflora rose bush. And you know how thick those things are. And he steps out, and I'm at full draw, and I let her fly, and I hit that deer good, and he didn't go very far at all and toppled over. But as soon as I released that arrow, I knew that was not the buck. Well, it's a 2.5-year-old 9-pointer. The rack is right here on my wall, right above my door, where I'm sitting right now, 10 feet from me. And that was my second, and that was when I was working at the factory, and I had the whole month of November off. And we could kill 2 bucks in Illinois. Well, that was my second buck, and this was the beginning of a month-long vacation away from work just to hunt. And I just filled my second buck tag with a 2-year-old deer. And you talk about disgusted with myself. I was disgusted with myself. And I know some people would have went and, taken their wife to Walmart to buy a tag and come back and put somebody else's tag on it, whatever. I sucked it up, threw my tag on it, loaded the thing up, and actually went out to my truck and drove the truck back across the field to where the deer laid. And the deer was so small, I was able to pull it up onto the tailgate and into the back of the truck by myself. And so I get it loaded up, and I'm driving out of the property, and I come around a bend in the creek where the tree line made a bend. And when I come around that bend, there was that giant buck that I'd seen in the dark with the doe standing at the edge in the pit cornfield. And they took off running, of course, but it was almost, and as he ran into the brush waving his tail, it was almost like he was flipping me the bird or something. I just filled my second tag, and I was done for the season.
Well, I appreciate Josh. I know social media is going to have different people with different opinions of why he shared it. I appreciate the tone in which he shared it. It was not for a pat on the back. It was to explain why he wasn't going to have this bucket list deer the opportunity this year. And I think it's a perfect example of that's the type of people we need to be watching and learning from. not only as a hunter, but also as a man, as a Christian human being. So we don't get the chance to see Josh or talk to him as much as we used to. We're all just so busy with our businesses. I know he's been blessed with the growth of his business and farming operation. Continue to wish him well, and we just wanted to say how much we appreciate what he did to stand up like we want more people to. So let's take another break, and we'll be back after the Midwest Land Group spot to get our listener-submitted questions for this week. We'll be right back.
Does your real estate agent know the difference between a rub and a scrape? Or did they ask how many deer you caught this year? At Midwest Land Group, our agents evaluate the land the way serious hunters do, because it's exactly who we are. From surveys, soil types, floodplains and easements, to timber quality, tree stands, access, and food plots. Whether you're interested in buying or selling, work with an agent who speaks your language. Visit MidwestLandGroup.com to connect with one today. Midwest Land Group. Buyers, sellers, land. Connected.
All right, the first question comes from Garrett Geiger from Larwell, Indiana. It says, Don and Terry, thank you guys for this awesome podcast and for sharing the gospel. My question is, do you guys worry about keeping your truck or Terry's hunting trailer scent-free during hunting season? I try to keep my gear as scent-free as possible, but I always wonder if as soon as I jump in the truck, if I did it all for nothing. Thank you for reading my question and good luck to both of you this season. Well, Garrett, you know what? I need to go out and take a picture of my hunting clothes and so Terry can post it on here, because I bet most listeners would be absolutely shocked at how I take care of my hunting clothes. And so I've said it before, but back in the day, I did everything you could possibly do for scent control. Everything. I washed my clothes in scent-free detergent. I sprayed down. I'd take a shower before I'd go to hunt. Change my clothes once I got to my hunting spot. I carried a bottle to pee in. I even took chlorophyll tablets to cut down on body odor. And guess what? I still got winded. And one day, it all started with the pee bottle. I looked at that pee bottle and I'm thinking, this thing has got to stink. Come on, I've been peeing in it for a year. Of course, I dumped it out. It's not like I kept the pee in there, but still, that thing, I looked at it, I think this has got to stink. So the first thing I did was I left the pee bottle back home, and next hunt, I peed out of my stand. I told this story before. 30 minutes later, a 2-year-old 8-point buck walks under my stand, smells where I just peed out of the stand, and starts eating the grass I just peed on. So I never worried about that again. And then as time went on, I kept getting winded and I kept getting winded. It's like, I'm doing all this stuff. It's a real pain in the butt and it's doing absolutely no good. And that's when I become really conservative as far as playing the wind and not pushing too deep into the cover and making sure that my scent is blowing into an area where the deer are very unlikely to be. And a lot of people, they don't want their scent blown out into a field because they think, well, the deer will be feeding out in the field and they'll scent me. Well, how many mature bucks are walking across the field in daylight? They're hanging tight to the cover. And, anyway, I just quit doing it all to this day. I don't use any scent control measures. A lot of times when I'm doing a seminar, this question comes up. And I'll ask the crowd, I'll say, how many people in here use any form of scent control? You got the scent control clothing, you spray down, take a shower before you go hunting with the scent-free soap, whatever. How many people do any of those things? And every hand goes up. Then I say, how many of you have been winded how many of you got winded last season? Every hand goes up. It's like, yeah, you guys are doing all this stuff and you're still getting winded. You're wasting your money. You're taking the fun out of the hunting. You got to learn to play the wind. And that's the key. I mean, it doesn't matter if you could smell totally scent-free and drop out of the sky into your stand. That buck is going to come by, a mature buck, most of the time he's playing the wind. And even if he can't smell you, he still wants to be where he can smell where he's going and smell the cover that he can't see into. It's all about playing the wind. And there's going to be guys argue that's not necessary. I see these stupid videos, and they are stupid videos. I'm not misspeaking there, of people saying you don't have to play the wind. No, you don't. You don't have to shoot big deer either. You can shoot dinks on accident, or you can shoot big ones on purpose. And if you want to shoot big ones on purpose, you better play the wind. So I just think you need to forget the whole scent control regiment and you need to focus on playing the wind, setting your stands up where you can play the wind. Think about how the buck is going to be coming through past your stand and how the wind is going to affect him. Is it a wind that he wants, or are you expecting him to commit suicide and come through with the wind at his back? Because that's very, very unlikely to happen. So playing the wind really stacks the odds in your favor compared to trying to control your scent.
I'm gonna answer it a different way. Is that okay?
You can answer it any way you want, Terry.
I think when somebody understands the wind, that's when they take their hunting to a whole new level. When you taught me, and I remember it specifically when you drew the picture, and I went and you start applying that, and it wasn't just the picture. That's what first visualized it for me. But when you took me to a hunting spot I have in Illinois and said, "This is where the deer is going to walk under these conditions and why," it was like this light bulb went off, and that's when consistently I started not only seeing a ton more deer, but also being able to kill deer 5 and 6 years old consistently. So I think understanding the wind needs to be much bigger priority than anything else. If you decide to use scent control, you're not hurting yourself. It's just how much are you really doing anything better? So yes, I don't wear my camo into Waffle House. I don't wear my camo in the truck. I get dressed outside when I get there or in the hunting trailer. But outside of your specific question was, do you guys worry about keeping your truck scent free? No. Especially in hunt camp where I go to Illinois and live and eat horribly for a month. I don't smell real good with my digestive system, so my truck usually is not that great of an environment for scent free driving back every night after hunting. So is that the polite way of saying it, that I poop myself all the time?
Well, I've seen a video this week too of some hunting personality said that the scent control industry is the biggest scam out there. Yeah. And I agree with him.
Yeah.
It's just
I don't take it real serious. I probably take it more serious than Don. I'm hoping he can take a good enough picture of his garage that I can use it as the thumbnail for this video, for this episode. But I take a little bit more care than Don, but not much. I don't worry about, having my backpack out or in the trailer, or you're not going to fool a deer's nose that much. Hunt where you need to be. I think that's the bigger priority of where, especially the people that think they can use scent free and hunt the wrong wind. That's the guys that you better hope it's the rut and something chases something by you, because that's the only chance you're going to have.
Well, I also hear a lot of times guys will swear by certain products. Well, I know this works because I used it and I had deer straight downwind of me and blah, blah, blah. Well, you got to remember the thermals. So think of smoke and think of someone burning leaves in their yard or whatever. Sometimes that smoke just rises and goes straight up. They're burning leaves, and it doesn't matter if it's really windy or calm. Some days that smoke is rising straight up from the source. And on other days, that smoke is just lingering there on the ground, and it doesn't seem like no matter which direction you go from the fire, that smoke is following you, and it's just lingering there on the ground. That's the thermals. And it does the same thing to your scent. Some days you could sit in your stand, and it doesn't matter which way the wind's blowing because your thermal's taking it up and away. And other days, it's taking it down and away. So these guys that say, yeah, I know it works because I had these deer downwind of me. Well, the thermals were probably carrying their scent right over the top of the deer's back, and the deer had no idea. Yeah, because they didn't smell them because they couldn't smell them.
All right. Well, we spent a lot of time on that question. Let's move to question number 2.
All right. This one comes from Adrian Nisley from Shreve, Ohio. Says, hi, Don and Terry. Thanks for the podcast, and Terry for the Chasing Assurance podcast. I know that Don doesn't like expandable broadheads, but I'm not sure if I have ever heard why. If you're always shooting at close distance and making good shots most of the time, why not make an even bigger hole in the deer so it dies even faster? To clarify, I've always been against expandable, but this year I decided to try some Sever. I want to try them on a doe, but haven't decided yet if I'll shoot a buck with them. Good luck to both of you this season. I would love to see Don go on a rant. Probably not going to happen on this question. We've been over this 100 times. So why am I against expandables is because an expandable, yeah, if you hit the deer perfect or even back in the guts, yeah, an expandable is probably going to leave a bigger hole. But what about that shoulder? That's the really big thing. I have shot more than one big buck. Mel's a perfect example. Go watch the video of Mel and see what happens to that arrow. It went through his shoulder and lodged in the off shoulder after going through his chest. That deer went 50 yards maybe. I can think of another 170-inch 10-pointer here on my wall that I hit the shoulder. And I thought when that arrow hit, it sounded like somebody took a baseball bat and broke it in two. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to be chasing this deer for 2 days and be lucky to ever find it. And I left and I didn't even come back. I shot him like 30 minutes after daylight in the morning. I didn't even come back to look for that deer until after lunch, and he went 50 yards just like Mel did, and right through the shoulder. That would never happen with an expandable broadhead or mechanical broadhead. Ask the guys that do the tracking with the dogs about expandables versus cut-on contact and how many they lose and never find with an expandable versus a cut-on contact. Almost all of them are going to tell you that there's more deer lost with an expandable. If you hit them right, it don't matter. Yeah, that bigger hole has an advantage, but that shoulder is right there close to where you're shooting. The thing that strikes me about this question is a couple things. First, apparently he switched to sever this year for some reason. Apparently what he was doing before wasn't working. And he didn't say that, but why would you switch? If something's working, why switch? But the thing that really bothers me about this question was he said he thinks he's going to try it on a doe, but he doesn't know if he's going to use it on a buck. Well, I think a doe deserves to be killed humanely just as much as a buck does. If it's good enough for a doe, it's good enough for a buck and vice versa. If you're not confident that that's the right thing to be using, don't use a doe as an experiment. I mean, we owe it to these animals to kill them as humanely and quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, the thing that put me, I mean, I used to shoot mechanicals, and it wasn't you. When I sat down and had a long conversation with Ron Slifer of the tracking service, and that was enough for me. When I heard the stories, and these are the guys that are in the business to chase marginal hit deer, right? And when they won't even go on a track, when they have to choose which track to go on one night because they only can get to so many, and they will literally make their decision based on the broadhead and the statistical chances of recovering it. That was what made my decision. So while I'm getting the third question up, if we want to go on a little bit of a rant here, I have a question for you. Will this be the first year that you will watch a Super Bowl halftime show now that Turning Point is having a alternative Super Bowl halftime show? Will you be watching it now since they're doing it?
Well, I might watch the Turning Point halftime show, but I guarantee you I won't watch the Super Bowl. I gave up the NFL a long time ago, and I probably shouldn't even go there.
I thought I might be able to get you on that one, but we'll go ahead and go to the
probably offend just about over half of our listeners, I guarantee it.
All right, here's the next question.
This one comes from Jordan Bashford from Chenoa, Illinois. It says, "Hi, Don and Terry. I'm 28 years old and hear stories of the good old days when land prices were cheap and fur prices were good. I often wish I were born back in those days when coons and coyotes were worth $25 a piece and deer hunting was in its prime, because I would have used this money to help buy my own land. Today things are different and fur is worth almost nothing and land prices are on the rise. I've heard you say in the past you wish you had spent every penny you had on land back when you were younger, even though times were tough. I am by no means made of money and consider myself with the average middle class. My question is, would it be better to buy a small acre property if that's what's in the budget now, just to get a foot in the door on owning land before prices rise more, or would it be better to just keep saving for a few more years, hoping to buy a bigger property that might be more of a forever place? Also, if someone had the money to invest in only one, would it be best to invest in a land consultation after a property was bought, or a tour of your farm to learn what to look for when buying a property and a general idea and how to set it up once purchased?" Well, Jordan, let me answer that last part first. If you're struggling to be able to afford a piece of ground, I think you should save your money and not invest in a land consultation or a farm tour. I think there's enough solid information on this podcast, on Chasing Giants TV, and on our various social media outlets that I think you can gain plenty of knowledge and tips there. Save your money. If money's not so much an object in your life, you ever get to that point, yeah, then hire a consultant or whatever. But I really don't want to consult on properties where people are having to scrape the money together and save for a year or whatever just to have me or any of the other guys come out. I think there's wiser ways to invest your money. When it comes to, should you buy a small piece now as a get your foot in the door, or wait till you can afford your dream property, whatever, I'm telling you, buy what you can buy and get your foot in the door. Buy what you can buy. I wish I could go back. I wasted so much money on the stock market, money that I lost, other investments. Yeah, a lot of times 401k is a good investment and all this. Me personally, I wish I would have never put money into any of those things. I wish I would have started buying land as early as I could in life, even if it was a small 1 acre piece of ground. Because, our buddy Brian Kraft, Midwest Land Group, he's big into analytics and really studies data and trends and such. And he told me that in the last 40 years, the average appreciation on land has been 7% a year. That's average. And in some recent years, it's been significantly more than that. There's been a couple of years it was more like 17%, I think. That land is limited. You can put your money in stocks, for example, and let's say a company has, I don't know, 10,000 stocks or shares. Well, tomorrow they could double that and there's 20,000 shares of that same company. With land, there's X number of acres of land in the United States. That number is not changing. They're not making more land. Yet there's more and more people on this planet every day in the market for land. I just don't see land as ever being a bad investment. The stock market can crash and has crashed, and it's cost people lots and lots of money in one day. Yesterday they had $100,000 in the stock market. Today they got 30. I mean, that can happen. It's not going to happen like that with land. That land is going to appreciate. It's going to be worth more. There's only a limited amount. I would buy what you can buy, pay off what you can, on a monthly payment or an annual payment. And when you get the first one paid off, either flip it to buy another one or keep it and buy another one. But I wish I would have started buying land way sooner than I did. Terry's sitting there smiling. I think he's got something to contribute here.
I think that it depends on what you mentioned retirement, and I probably have a little bit different opinion from you on that. I wouldn't walk away from an employee match. So if an employer is saying they will give you free money if you put money into a retirement, I would highly encourage you to take advantage of that. So a lot of companies okay, this is just where Don and I are different. I'll take the free money from the company tax-free every day. But going back to your original question, I think is really important, and that's where I do agree with Don. You said, do you save your money now or do you buy a small tract? Well, if you're saving your money now, your investment, the money that you have is going to make more of a return setting in land being a small tract than it will be setting in the bank growing. So, flipping the property or doing a little bit of investment to it, turnkeying it, getting some hunting data on it. Those smaller pieces of property are a lot of times more marketable than the bigger tracts of property because you have more people that are in your situation right now looking for their first investment. So I think not only from the buying land, there's not going to be any more of it, but also just getting a solid return on your money that you have right now or that you can afford to borrow. I would buy the land rather than sit on the money and save. But I also would not walk away from an employee match program that somebody's willing to hand you free coin. Take the free coin.
That's why Terry's successful at business and I'm not. I let my heart lead me astray, and I learned from my past lessons, and
I think we've both done okay in our respective fields, so I don't think. So I'm going to save question number 5 because it's just really, really long. There's like 3 paragraphs, but let's try to get one more question done. You gave me 6 this week, and we will save question number 5 for next week. So I'm going to skip one and put this one up because it's a little bit shorter. The other one's a little bit long.
This one comes from Evan Coleman from Richmond, Kentucky. He says, Don, you are truly making a difference in the hunting industry, and you help thousands of people like me cut off the learning curve and become better land managers. My question is regarding more of the lower middle class Americans. What is the best approach for people like us who want to kill mature bucks every year, but don't have the extra money for tree clearings, food plots, and the typical habitat work? If we seek permission to hunt, how do we go about finding them? What do you look for on a topography map that you think would be most likely to produce a mature buck? Thanks, and God bless. Best of luck this season to you and Terry. Well, I was in that boat with you for many years.
In that boat.
Yeah. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And there's no doubt it's more difficult when money's tight to chase big deer from a lot of different angles. For one, just the time. You got to do a much better job balancing your free time than I do. You got work. You got to be making money just to keep the bills paid and such. And again, I was there, so I understand. But, chasing big deer is, you need to cover a lot of territory. I'll even say it's significantly harder today than it was back when I was in your position because there's a lot more hunters. There's a lot more competition for hunting land. I didn't have to deal with people leasing up ground. I didn't have to deal with the bow hunters were very limited back in the day. Everybody was a gun hunter and very few were bow hunters. So it was a lot easier to get permission to archery hunt on a property than it is today. But it's just, even though it's harder today, it's the same approach. You got to knock on a lot of doors. What do you look for on topography? Well, I don't think it's so much topography. I've said before, if you're going to buy a land or a piece of ground, or if you're looking for hunting permission or whatever, you need to look at what sits around a track. If you can find a large tract of, say, sanctuary ground where no hunting's allowed, whether it be some kind of a park or an industrial area where no hunting's allowed, whatever it is, if you can find a piece of ground that butts right up to that's a great spot to be, no matter how big it is. I like isolation. And that can be very tough to find. Very few properties really fit my definition of isolation today, or at least to the degree of isolation that I like. But it's just a matter of covering a lot of territory, knocking on a lot of doors, writing a lot of letters, boot leather in the off season, walking a lot of public ground, and it's just a matter of effort. And again, I'll be the first to tell you, it's a lot harder today than it was back when I was in the same situation that you are financially.
There's no doubt about it. I think the best tool for guys, like when I remember I was coming up, was the art of the side hustle. It's become where it costs you money to do this. I mean, it just is. So whether you mow yards on the side during the summertime to save up your hunting, because taking away money from your family to do this, we've talked about that many times. Your families, you can't deprive your family for this. You have to keep your priorities in place. So I got buddies that sell firewood. I have buddies that mow yards. I have buddies that do all different kinds. I'm a firm believer in the side hustle or side gig that pays for your hobbies, or when you got to put your income from your normal job to your family. But the other thing that I've had best luck with is, you have some of those relationships you meet through church, or maybe your grandparents were friends or something like that. But when that's not an option, you go up to a farmer and offer to help, free labor, build fence for a weekend, or you put some hard manual labor. Manual laborers right now are impossible to find. So you go to any business, what's their biggest complaint? They don't have people that show up for work. So when you find somebody that's got land, offer to help, offer to do something there in return for being able to hunt. You'll have a whole lot more options, because I guarantee you most entitled people aren't going to go offer to get their hands dirty to to do what you're trying to do. So that's another thing that I've had good luck with over the years.
Yeah, as I think back when I was younger going through this same stage, it was easier for me to get permission back in the day than it is today with some better finances. I could get more permission back then free than I can today, even offering to lease. That's how difficult it has become. But Terry's absolutely right about the labor side of things. We've seen that in the businesses we own, that finding help, especially good help, is just darn near impossible.
I had a land consulting client. I think I told this story on the podcast not too long ago, but I told them there was a row crop field on the northern side of their farm, and I said, I can do this plan and make it as good as I can, but if you figure out a way to get this farmer to let you walk across that open ag field from that road over there and let you park and walk in, I think it's like 200 yards, to come into the north side of your property, this is a game changer for our plan for the consultation. And he ended up showing up one day, and the guy's cows were out, and he didn't even know it was the landowner that he needed to talk to. He was just driving to the country and saw this guy's with a bunch of cows out, and him and his buddy spent I don't know how long trying to get these cattle in. Ends up being the same guy that owned that field. And it was because they stopped. The guy said, absolutely, you guys can have access to walk across there. So I'm telling you, if you can find a farm that's not being leased and offer to help out on the farm, or offer to cut firewood or mow their yard, even use their equipment, you'd be surprised at what people will let you do. So I think that's your best shot. All right, well, that's the end of our questions. We'll have to remember, Don, to save question number 5 that you gave me we'll roll it over into next week. And remember that those people, if you want to submit a question, go to chasinggiants.com. That will take you to the podcast page, and you can scroll to the bottom and submit your questions. If you want to submit a question to my dad on the Chasing Assurance podcast, visit chasingassurance.com. And this week, I believe off the top of my head, our friend Harold Monk from Wiseye has Sunday night prayer time at the end of this episode. So make sure you stay tuned to that after Don gives us his closing comments and signs us off here.
Well, really looking forward to this week with that cold weather coming in. Hope you guys get out there too. Wish you the best of luck. God bless. We'll see you back here next week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Hello guys, this is Harold from Wiseye. I want to share a couple things with you. My favorite verse in the Bible comes from this little bitty book called Habakkuk. And I'm going to read it for you and let you understand. And so I'm reading from the Bible app, and this is probably the greatest thing I've ever had. I carry the Bible with me all the time. And this is what it says. It's Habakkuk 3, and it starts kind of in verse 17. And it says, "And the fields shall yield no food. The flock shall be cut off from the fold. There shall be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in Jehovah. I will joy in the Lord of my salvation. Jehovah the Lord is my strength, and he makes my feet like deer's feet, and will make me walk upon the high places." What a great verse Habakkuk did. If you break it down, Habakkuk paints a picture of a lot of total loss. There's no crops, there's no livestock, there's no visible reason for hope. What that meant for them in those days, that just meant there's no food, no income, and no security. Everything tangible that they need to survive is gone, totally gone. But in the middle of this hopeless scene that he's in, Habakkuk says, "Yet I will rejoice in the Lord." He doesn't deny that there's a hardship out there, yet he refuses to let it define his faith. You see, this faith that Habakkuk had transcends the circumstance. And this is a reminder that God, or that the joy in God is not based on what we have, but on who he is. When everything else fails, God is faithful. Habakkuk declares that the sovereign Lord is my strength. He compares it to the strength of a deer. We're deer hunters. We know how fast and strong they are. They're swift. They're sure-footed. They're able to climb the heights and even on rocky ground. God doesn't always remove our problems, but he gives us the footing to stand strong and move forward through them. Guys, I hope this gives you some hope this week. You know, and where in life do you feel like the fig tree is not budding? You know, if you're in that mindset, just remember, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Remember, joy is not the absence of trouble, but it's the presence of trust in God. Thank you for listening to me this evening. So I want to say a quick prayer. So, Father, thank you for your strength and thank you for your presence in our lives. Even though some of us may be going through some hard times, you put the joy in our lives. Even though some of us may be thinking that all hope is lost, there's no cattle in the stalls, there's no flock in the field, there's no crops in the field. Yet, you promised you would take care of us. We just ask for your faithfulness, Father, in everything we do. We know you're faithful and you're always going to be with us. Thank you for your Son and what he's died for us and what it means for us in the long run, Father, that we will be in your presence. And that's all we need. And that is the hope and the joy of our salvation. So thank you, Father, for what you've done. For we ask in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you, guys. You have a great week. If any of you need to talk, my phone number is available. My email is available. Love to talk to you. If you're struggling with anything, we'd love to talk to you. Thank you once again. Y'all have a blessed week. Thank you.